In just over 3 weeks, the transfer portal will open. What do the Hawkeyes need offensively? A look at the biggest needs and what can separate Iowa next season for a big run.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network. We have stations across the state, including Sioux City, the Quad Cities, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and our flagship 106.3 KXNO in Des Moines. You can hear me each weekday on all those stations from noon to 2. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to take a look at the offense and the offseason that is close to being upon us. Of course, a bowl game, Iowa Vanderbilt in Tampa Bay. We're going to take a look first, though, at the offense. Some of the need positions in the transfer portal as we are 24 days away from the portal opening. We will get into that. Also going to hear from Elliot Clough. Some thoughts from Elliot, including a pretty good nugget from Elliot at the quarterback position after the graduation of Mark Gronowski. We're going to talk a little bit about that with Elliot. Plus, we'll set up the week in front of us. Iowa State on the hardwood, women's side, men's side, and maybe a surprising number coming your way with the first one on Wednesday with the Hawkeye women facing off against the Cyclone women. Today, though, we begin with football, and we begin with the transfer portal, as Iowa, as always, has some shopping to do. Now, there's many people out there that will try to make you believe that Iowa's not going to be active in the transfer portal because of they have an older coach. Well, they have one of the oldest coaches, 70-year-old, obviously Kirk Ferentz at the helm. And people think because of that Iowa's not active. That has not been the case. Now, they're not going to be like some programs, and they're not going to be a place where they're bringing in 20, 25, 30 guys that are going to be newbies coming onto the roster out of the transfer portal. But I mean, we go back when this thing really started to open up, and you go back to 3 years ago when they brought in Cade McNamara. Remember, that was a year that Iowa brought in 12 guys out of the transfer portal, and they have used it, obviously, to augment the roster, and overall have done a pretty good job. But this is going to be a roster that is going to obviously need some tweaks going in to next season. So as we look at this squad, and we're going to start today just talking about the offense. And when you look at the offense and the portal needs that are going to be in front, a lot of people will start at the top. Mark Gronowski came in, Cade McNamara's come in. Iowa's had so many transfer quarterbacks, and well, they have 2 transfer quarterbacks currently on the roster on top of it, the guys that are the anticipated heir apparents. I think after we saw the ascension of Jeremy Hecklinski, was the number 3 quarterback, elevated to number 2 after Hank Brown's performance in the game against Indiana. People said it was Hecklinski did what he did, obviously, in the game, in the practices leading up to the Wisconsin game. Remember, leading into that game, there were a lot of questions if Mark Gronowski was going to be able to go. Now, Hecklinski is more athletic, quicker, not your prototypical drop back passer. That's what you have with Hank Brown. Hank Brown came in from Auburn. He can sling it around. One thing that we know Tim Lester also worked with him, changing his delivery a little bit. There were some things that they wanted to see change and kind of get it a little bit more upright, not that 3-quarter delivery, and that's something that they worked on with Hank Brown. I know that many people's lasting image was, well, the last image that we saw from Hank Brown, and that was him missing the screen pass that likely would have beat Indiana. Talk about a different conversation we're having today. Alas, that didn't happen. Then we saw Hecklinski after that, mentioned the Wisconsin game. Hecklinski's not a big guy. He's listed at 5'11". I don't think he's 5'11". Hank Brown's a big guy, 6'4". What you're hoping for both ways, though, is both those guys stick around. January 2nd is when the transfer portal will open. And another thing to remember, there is only one window that is open now in college football. There are not multiple periods that you can go in, not after spring practice, unless you are a graduate and a grad transfer. That is the only loophole, if you will, in that. Now, Iowa's been sniffing around, and there was already some contact with a quarterback from West Georgia, West Florida, one of the two. There's been obviously looking around, seeing what is out there, and I think you have to do that. Still, it feels like Tim Lester is happy with what they have. And maybe most importantly, let's hope we can go through a spring and actually see a multitude of different quarterbacks with Hecklinski, Brown, even Jimmy Sullivan, go through spring practice and have that ability to have those guys go through it healthy and get through unscathed. That is something that has not been able to happen these last couple of years with Tim Lester at the helm. Ryan Fitzgerald, will he go with his dad to Michigan State? I think a lot of people anticipate that. So you go into the year really with just 3 quarterbacks, and they're going to have to at minimum bring in another depth piece. And I think you're probably going to see that in one side or fashion. The running back spot on the surface doesn't feel like a place that they're going to go. But what if there are defections? Jaziun Patterson, he'll go into a senior year next year. Not going to be the starter. We saw him number 2, number 3, sometimes number 4 running back this year. Is he a guy from Florida, wants to get close to home? You know, he could go to a number of Conference USA or Sun Belt programs, probably be a starter right away. Is that a decision he wants to make and go that direction? You feel good about Kamari Moulton, solid season. Nathan McNeil, we saw those glimpses. Same with Xavier Williams, 2 freshman running backs. You still got Brevin Dahl there. You still got Terrell Washington Jr. The only change would be what would happen if we saw a couple of those guys depart. So one to keep an eye on there. Obviously, wide receiver is a need position. And though you feel pretty good about what you have with Reese Vanderzee coming back, we saw a bunch of Dayton Howard made a couple of big plays this season, including in the Rutgers game that helped win that football game. I know they like KJ Parker, but there just isn't a whole lot there. You lose Caden Weegan. You lose Sam Phillips. You lose Seth Anderson. You lose Jacob Gill. I mean, that is a lot to lose out of a wide receiver group that certainly didn't blow the doors off. Obviously, I think number 1 at the top of the list offensively is a need of what they have to do at the wide receiver position. Tight end, probably not. Addison Estrenga is going to come back now, coming off a pretty difficult injury to recover from with that Achilles injury. Still, he's going to be come back. We saw DJ Vonamy and what he was able to do this season and what an eye-opening performance it was out of that. Zach Ortworth, he has another year. We got to see a little bit of Michael Burt. What we saw late in the year out of Thomas Meyer, Mason Woods, Eli Johnson. They're incredibly deep at that position. Doesn't feel like tight end would be a place that they would be shopping. And then finally, offensive line. And we've talked about this a little bit before. You everydayers, you know, this offensive line, I'm pretty high, even with the losses that they have going into next season. Leighton Jones had to play a ton this year because of the injuries to Poe Stevens. At the right tackle spot, remember, it was close down to the wire with Trevor Lauk and Jack Dotzler. Well, is it as simple as Dotzler goes over to right tackle, Lauk obviously entrenched as your left tackle of what he did this year. And then finally in the middle, you know, is it a position where you make the decision, you know what, we're going to move over Cade Pieper. He becomes your center. If that's the case, who's going to be that other guard? Now, we saw Michael Myslinski. He has another year of eligibility, a possibility of him. Some of the young guys, you got huge guys like Cannon Leonard. Maybe it's a George Nahas, and maybe the apple of everybody's eye is Lucas Allgaier, who showed up as a true freshman on the depth chart at times this year, and certainly a guy that has a whole lot of future to him. Do you slot him in right away and get him going at one of the guard positions? So offensive line, maybe more of a depth piece. Not going to go out. Offensive linemen are incredibly expensive in the portal and try to get some of those top flight guys. And we saw, as you've gone through in the portal, and Iowa's brought in 3 different guys, they haven't had a ton of success with those transfers, at least at this point in time. Rusty Feth, obviously the top of the list of what he's been able to do. So there's a glimpse for you of the transfer portal, at least what we're looking at on the offensive side. Mentioned the quarterback spot. Elliot Clough's going to join us next. Audio gets a little wonky at the end, just a quick hit with Elliot, but he has some really good information at the quarterback position. Myself, I think it's Jeremy Hecklinski's job to lose. Is it? Elliot Clough will tell us on the other side as we come back. Locked On Hawkeyes, thanks for joining us here today. We're back with more in a moment. The holidays come with 2 big goals: feeding people well and finding gifts they'll actually love. And when you want both handled in one move, Omaha Steaks is the way to go. From hosting to gifting, they deliver the world's best steak experience right to your door. Because during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you can stock up and save in a huge way. 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. And it gets even better. Locked On College listeners, you're going to get an extra $35 off with code COLLEGE at checkout. I've said it before. It has worked incredibly well. That special someone that seems difficult to shop for, this is the kind of gift for them. And you got so many options. Of course, the great steaks, but burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. You can build a box for anyone on your holiday shopping list. Holiday Magic made easy. Order by 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Central Time, and it's going to ship the same day. Save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale and an extra $35 off. Use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com with the code COLLEGE.
Elliot Clough, 24/7 Sports. He joins the program. Hello, Elliot. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Ken?
I'm good. I appreciate you coming on and giving us a few minutes. I'll get to basketball in just a second. Just put a bow on at least where we're at so far in football. We know that I was going to play Vanderbilt in that game. Do you think that Pavia is going to play? Have you heard either yay or nay? I'm not sure why he'd bow out. I mean, I don't think he's got an NFL career, but far be it from me. What are you hearing about holdouts are not going to play with Iowa, and then in particular Pavia with Vanderbilt?
Well, start with Pavia. I haven't heard anything on that front. My expectation is that he'll play. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure I heard this on a broadcast the other day. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's fighting for another year of eligibility, and that's not a joke. So if that's the case, he will most likely, almost definitely be playing this bowl game. But yeah, it would surprise me either way if he doesn't play. I don't think he's a top 3-round pick, maybe even a pick at all.
I'm with you.
So I would be surprised if he decides to opt out. Doesn't really seem like his style either, but who knows? In terms of Iowa, Kirk Ferentz said it on a Zoom call with us with the media the other day that he does not expect any opt out for the bowl game for Iowa. So not really surprised by that. Iowa doesn't really have a Caleb Johnson this year. You can maybe point to a Jennings Dunker as a guy who's been mocked in first round drafts, but that's not who Jennings is at all. He'll want to play in his final game that he can play in at Iowa.
Yeah, I saw Dunker yesterday in first round mock draft.
Still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had a good season. That offensive line had a good season. They are a finalist for the Joe Moore Award.
Indiana, who and Iowa and one other, I think. Yeah, anyways, go ahead, sir.
They I put it together, and you look at next year, though they're going to be losing some big pieces, including Jennings Dunker, a 3-year starter in Logan Jones. It feels like the pieces are in place for them next season to have a pretty good offensive line. That's a pretty good starting place when you go into the portal season starting here in January, knowing that at minimum, that offensive line looks like it's going to be at least solid. How do you see the offensive line, and probably a place they're not going to be shopping, Elliot?
They could go out and get a depth piece. I do think that is something that Iowa wants to do, actually. Just a guy, not so much a 1-year rental like they've had with like the Dejon Parkers, the Rusty Fest, the Bryce Georges, who Rusty Fest is the only one of that trio who actually contributed a good amount of snaps. But yeah, I mean, this is a phenomenal starting point going into another year with Cade Pieper and Trevor Locke presumably coming back, Michael Mislinski back for his final year of eligibility thanks to a medical waiver. Leighton Jones with a bunch of reps at left guard this year with Bo Stevens having some injuries here and there. And then Jack Dotzler, who subbed in for Jennings Dunker at right tackle and started the year switching off with Trevor Locke at that left tackle spot. So you might not have a ton of starting experience, but you've got a bunch of experience coming back and veteran leadership on that offensive line. By the way, Oregon was the other one that's in the Joe Moore Award running. But yeah, I mean, hats off to George Barnett, right? Like he came in to this program and the recruiting and where things sat with the offensive line was just a mess. And he completely turned it around. Obviously you had Linderbaum at the time, but other than that, a bunch of young guys and a bunch of guys who just weren't very good. And he built that group, and he built it with guys that were Polisek guys that weren't even his, like Jennings Dunker, Logan Jones. I mean, Logan Jones was brought in as a defensive tackle, but still, Jennings Dunker was a Polisek recruit, and Barnett came in and shaped the room to what he wants it to be. He's got his guys on the line now, they're one of the best offensive line, if not the best offensive line in college football.
What will they do at the quarterback position as far as will they be looking for someone? Obviously I think Hank Brown's going to have a decision to make. There is no, what do they call it? The spring a portal anymore. There's only one. So if he's going to, it's going to have to come relatively soon. He can't go through spring practice and then, enter the portal right after that 2-week period. What does Hank Brown do? And are they going to be looking? I would assume that they're going to have to be, right? Or is it all dependent on Hank Brown's decision?
Well, I'll tell you this, just got a bit of info yesterday actually, is that Hank Brown has started to practice really well. In this bowl prep window. So don't count him out. He's going to give Hecklinski everything that he can to win that, maybe not win it, but compete for the starting job going into next season. It might be a competition through spring based on that. They've only practiced twice full go with the 2s and the 3s in bowl prep they went Friday and then Monday, but apparently Hank has looked pretty good. And Hecklinski was actually missed practice. He was just sick, but so Brown's got a ton of reps and apparently looked pretty good. So don't count him out. If he does enter the portal, which is still a possibility, would not surprise me if Iowa does go after a quarterback. They like to have 4 scholarship guys and a walk-on in that room for the sake of, well, we saw why in 2024 when Jackson Stratton had to play. So especially if Brown portals, then they'll look for a quarterback in my mind's eye. But I think they're happy with 4 scholarship guys and a walk-on. Obviously, that being Hecklinski, Brown, Bessinger, Jimmy Sullivan, and then Fitzgerald at that walk-on spot. So if they do, if Brown sticks and they do decide to add another walk-on piece, I would imagine it would be like a Stratton situation where they're just like, hey, this is a guy with a bit of depth that has some college experience that can come in and add some leadership or just experience to the room. That would be my guess. But if Brown doesn't stick, then you got to go get somebody.
What do you think? I mean, that's encouraging for Hank Brown that he's practicing well. You made the point yesterday. Who are we speaking to? And he reminded me, because I forgot all about it, that there's only one portal. I mean, there's only one transfer that's only open once. You better get in. You can't go through spring practice and then, you know what, that's probably not in the cards. I'm going to move on after that. You can't. It's too late.
No doubt. I look at it and I think of a guy like Jaziun Patterson.
Yeah.
Go back home.
Right.
Florida Atlantic, Florida Internet, something like that, where he can probably go in there, be a starter, and get a senior season to do that. Those are the kind of pieces. You look at the offensive line, or there's some of those veteran guys that are looking around. I know some conversations have already been had. They're going through the one-on-one with Coach Ferentz and position coaches. There's been a few guys that said, you look at those redshirt sophomores, haven't played yet.
Yep.
Probably not going to happen.
Right.
And then some of them I know have been told just that. Probably not going to play here.
Yep.
Might be able to be a special teamer, but that's it.
Yep.
How many of those guys depart? A lot of those guys say, I'm fine with that. Local guys love the experience at the University of Iowa. They're fine with it. I'm happy being a depth piece. Until we know that portion of it. Here's another thing. Do we know what the roster limit's going to be next season?
No, that's a great point. No, I don't think we do.
Shouldn't that be something that we should know?
I think that
they just changed the rules on the fly last year.
Yeah, they did.
And then all these guys that were
did.
Some places, like in Iowa City and Ames, did it right and tried to help these guys find homes.
Yep.
Other places
were punished for it, essentially.
Yes.
For doing the right thing.
And the SEC, they still had 125 guy rosters where our in-state schools did it right, got down to 105. Oh, no, actually, we're going to walk that back.
Yeah.
What a mess. Thanks again to Elliot Clough for joining us. As mentioned, the phone line went a little wonky there at the end, but really good information. And Hank Brown having a couple of good bowl practices. Those are the stories that we're certainly looking for, in the stories we'll continue to pass along for you here on Locked on Hawkeyes. It's a big weekend state. It's Iowa State. We're going to talk a little bit about the matchups coming up here. Want to say thank you, though, to all of you and making Locked on Hawkeyes your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked on Hawkeyes with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to our website. It is lockedonhawkeyes.supercast.com. That's lockedonhawkeyes.supercast.com. That's where you can go right now to get a part of this. Check out the link, the show notes also. That's where you can find out more information. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes, a look at the basketball front, including an intriguing number. Iowa State on the women's hardwood on Wednesday night. A lot of people think that the Cyclones are going to be a big favorite. Numbers tell us a different story. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. Let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's so clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to finding those seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pick a game, tap a section, and you have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting the fine print, and their seat view feature. It is an absolute game changer. Know exactly where you're going to be inside the stadium. See what everything looks like before you buy. My favorite part, though, of the Game Time app, upfront pricing. You know those fees beforehand. No more surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets, every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time today. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Big thank you to our everyday listeners as well, our everydayers out there, an opportunity for you to get involved as well with our great all access tier. Let's get into right now basketball. We'll talk more tomorrow about all these matchups and dig a little bit deeper, but I was playing around. As our everyday listeners know, I like to play around on the analytical websites. And one thing that jumped out to me is first, Bart Torvik, the website that has women's analytics on it, has Iowa 12th in the country, Iowa State 21st, certainly much lower than they are in the AP poll. Here's another thing. Iowa ranked number 12, offensively, 25th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency. Defensively, how about the Hawkeyes at number 9? That was an eye-opening number. On the other side, Iowa State really good on the offensive end of the floor. They're 7th in the country, but not very good defensively. In fact, when you put all that together, Bart Torvik has Iowa a slight favorite in this game. He's got Iowa winning it at Hilton 76-75. Incredibly tight. We know this is going to be a good game. Iowa, though, has played very well in this game. We'll see how this one goes. Now, I don't think we could read a whole lot into what Iowa did against Rutgers. That was a Rutgers team that was banged up and just did not shoot the ball well. They were 1 of 12 from the three-point line. Remember the game before, Fairfield hit 18 three-pointers in that game in the Iowa victory, 86-72. The Baylor team that Iowa beat right there before Thanksgiving looked like it was going to be a nice win. We'll see. They have not played the most difficult of schedules. They beat Duke. That Duke team has proved not to be probably quite as good as a lot of people anticipated before the season. In fact, the Dukies are now 4-6 on the year in women's basketball. And we'll find out a little bit more just how good that Baylor win maybe was as they get Texas coming up this weekend. They're a big underdog in that game. Back to Iowa State, though, on the women's side. I think guarding the three-point line is going to be a big part of this one. I definitely think when you look at this, the way that both teams are going to play inside, got to stay out of foul trouble. It's not just the guarding of Audie Crooks that is difficult. That's difficult in its own right. But it's also Addie Brown. She is tough, rugged. She can beat you inside. She can beat you outside. And really what's been the key for Iowa State this year has been the play of Jada Williams, their point guard who visited Iowa, ended up there. Iowa ended up with Chit Chat Wright. Also what we're going to see from Chit Chat. Left the game again against Rutgers with another injury as she got hit in the face in that one. What her availability is going to be. Think she's going to play. But how effective is she going to be going up a bigger point guard in Jada Williams? Guard those other shooters, though, on the outside. Cover them up. Hare, Jackson Williams. Don't let them get going in their home gym from the outside. That's going to be a big one here. If Ada Hayden can stay out of foul trouble, they're going to be in good shape. Layla Hayes, is she ready for the prime time? I love what we've seen from Journey Houston. I think she can help out. What kind of minutes does Addie deal? Going to be a tremendous matchup. And then over on the men's side, I mentioned, yes, that Iowa, 1-point favorite, at least according to Bart Torvik. We'll see what our friends over at FanDuel have to say on that one. Thursday on the men's side, the analytics say not going to be that close. Iowa State now a 13-point favorite in this game over at Ken Pom. You saw what Iowa State did over the weekend going into Mackey. We know how tough that environment is, and they obliterated the Boilermakers. The, at the time, number 1 ranked team in the country, Boilermakers. It didn't go very well against Michigan State. It was a tough environment. Bennett Sturt struggled. What's it going to be like here? We need proof of concept. Until we see Iowa in this kind of environment play well, it's going to be difficult to formulate a game plan to say, yeah, they can hang around and give themselves a shot going into the last 4 minutes of the game on the road against Iowa State. But we will try to do that. In fact, we will try to do that for you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in today to the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Tomorrow, we'll have a crossover edition. We'll talk to Nick Maravitz over with Locked On Cyclones, and we will break down both the women's and the men's game for you. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Hawkeyes to get all the latest episodes. You can also find us on Twitter at Locked On Iowa is where you can find us over there. We're also with you on TikTok, on Instagram. You can find all of us there. Even Facebook, we got you covered. Just search Locked On Hawkeyes. And did you make Locked On Hawkeyes make your Spotify rap? Prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any of those social platforms, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure to make your second listen of the day Locked On College Football. You can find all the information and more over at lockedonhawkeyes.supercast.com. Tomorrow, crossover edition Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us today. We will talk to you tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.